We are live. We are live. This is Senate Finance. We are starting late because we were on the floor. This is crossover week and things are unpredictable. We are going to continue our work on S13, which is an act relating to requiring the Agency of Transportation to request conditions in relation to the relicensing of the Bellows Fall hydroelectric project. Remember, yesterday we heard from members of, from the town of Rockingham, of which Bellows Falls is a village. And today we'll give both the Agency of Transportation and the owners of the hydro dam. So, Justin.
Yep. So I think in the interest of time, you probably don't want to hear from a lobbyist. So we're going to have Erin O'Day, who's the CEO of Great River, go first, and then Brandon will follow. The VP will follow.
Okay. And you can do this individually. You can do it together. Just pull a chair up. Right there. We just ask that you introduce yourselves, the record, and then the floor is yours.
Super. My name is Brandon Kibbe. I'm Vice President of External Affairs for Great River Hydro. And while I'm handing out some handouts, I will allow Erin to start.
Thank you. So I'm Erin O'Day. I'm the CEO of Great River Hydro. So this was basically, we made aware of this or dropped on us on Tuesday.
Well,
it has potential
that's what we learned.
Right, exactly. So I cleared my calendar and, wanted to be here today to take the time with you all.
Thank you. And we apologize for the inconvenience. This has been a rather unusual year again, in that bills are coming out very slowly. And to get a bill that needs to be out by tomorrow, yesterday, it's never happened. Said in my experience. So we are going to do our best to do deliberation on this one. If it'll go up, down, or sit here, I don't know. But we heard from one side, we want to hear from yours. And thank you. How far did you come?
I just drove up from Massachusetts. We have an office near White River Junction,
Okay.
the Wilder station. So I was there this morning for other meetings. So not that far.
All right. Well, that's still far. All right.
So I thought I would start off by just giving you a quick overview about the company. So there's the first slide here talks about the company. So as I mentioned, I'm the CEO of Great River Hydro. I've been with the company over 15 years. So I live in Massachusetts, also work at our plants in New Hampshire and Vermont. So this slide shows you the layout of the facilities. So as you might know, we have 5 FERC licensed facilities. So they're federally the FERC regulated facilities. We have 13 power plants, 3 storage only reservoirs. We have 589 megawatts of conventional hydropower. So when I say conventional hydropower, I mean not pump storage. These are facilities that are seasonal storage capability on the Connecticut River and then on the Deerfield River. 11 of those facilities are low impact hydro. So that's very important to the company. We are a renewable generating company. I often say to our employees, we were renewable before being renewable was cool. We've been operating some of these facilities like the Vernon Station since 1909. So they've been a part of the electric grid in New England since the dawn of electricity. So we're a wholesale electricity provider. And what that means is we're not a regulated utility. We don't pass on our rates to customers. We live and die by the market prices and how we can run the company. So as a conventional hydro, like our representation of our size in New England, we're about 20% of the energy, about 40% for hydro of the capacity markets in New England. Just a couple of years ago, we signed a 30-year power purchase agreement with Green Mountain Power. It was approved by the Vermont Public Utilities Commission. We started serving that load in 2023. So GMP has been a great partner. They get a portion of our energy delivered locally, and they also get half of our renewable energy credit. So we're proud to have that relationship with them and be delivering our power to Vermont. So hydro is a different type of renewable. We are fast start and dispatchable. So we have capabilities that help regulate the grid to help support the penetration of intermittent renewables. So when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing, the hydros can be there. And they can also provide critical resources like black start, because it takes power to make power. So we have facilities that can help restart the grid in the event of a blackout. So we have a little over 100 employees. They are spread out in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts, pretty equally divided among the 3 states. We pay a significant amount of property taxes. So as a company, we pay 22 million in property taxes. And it's our biggest expense. It's more than our employee expenses. We're a significant taxpayer, and Brandon will talk about that, but we're a significant taxpayer in Vermont and have been for many, many years.
22 million a year, and on
Yeah.
just that property or across the whole state?
Across the whole company.
That little property in question?
It's like 3.5 million.
Almost $4 million
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, that's,
So-
I think 3.6 is what was quoted to us yesterday.
So across the whole company, it's all states.
All 3 states.
3
All
states. Yeah.
So for the facilities that are shown on.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got, like I mentioned, we have a control center. It's located in Wilder, Vermont. We've got offices near where the plants are located, employees in New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. We are a US-based, locally managed, locally operated company. So I am the CEO. Like I said, I've been with the company 15 years. Prior to that, I was the general counsel for the company. So we are locally managed. We are a portfolio company of Hydro-Quebec, so they acquired us a couple of years ago. They really liked the way we operate, and they wanted us to stay operating the way we had been operating, so they kept the management team intact, and that's why I have a job and I have this job and I'm not sitting somewhere else. So it's important for us as a company, the renewable energy that we provide to the state, and like I mentioned, we've been here for almost over a century, and would like to continue to be a part of the renewable energy transition in New England. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon, and he's going to talk more specifically about this bill and what it means for the company.
Great. So I'll jump to the next page here. And I know you talked a little bit about this yesterday, so I'll try to not repeat too much of what was said yesterday. But it's important to know, I'll tell you a little bit about the sort of history, and then tell you why precisely we oppose this bill. First of all, it was, as it was mentioned yesterday, Bellows Falls Canal, the first canal that was built in the United States. People said at the turn of the century, which I would say, which century were you talking about? Because it's actually the turn of the 19th century that canal was originally built. And as you can see on this map, it was originally built for navigation purposes. It was, for all intents and purposes at the time, a road. It was so that vessels could get by the natural falls in the river. They called Bellows Falls, but it wasn't an actual waterfall, it was rapids in the river. And so that's why that canal was built originally for navigation. And you can see in 1886 on the next page there is an image of Bellows Falls, what became what was originally the village of Bellows Falls, but became really a very vibrant and important community. And if you look at the next page, and it's largely because of that canal and the power that canal provided to industry, principally paper industry, on the island in particular. All of those mills that you see that sprouted up there in Bellows Falls were a result of having access to water power that was provided by those canals. There's that industry in that town that drove the development of the town to be what it is today. But that was kinetic power. Like in the old days, every one of those mills had a water wheel in it, and that water flowed under that mill, and it spun that wheel, and it either powered a grinder, or it powered a saw, or powered something kinetically in that mill. With the dawn of electrification, and you can see on this map on that page where the Depot Street Bridge is. The Depot Street bridge was originally built to access all of that industry that was on the other side. It had a clear public benefit to the community because it was the driver of the economic prosperity in that town. And you can see on the next page here, while that was still, this is in roughly 1909, these pictures are taken, when the Depot Street Bridge was built, when it was a kinetic powered canal that was kinetically powering the mills that were down on the riverside. This is a bridge that was built to get industry to and from that over that canal, and it was a public bridge. And so these public bridges existed long before hydropower existed, as you can see on the next page, providing us a public service and a public benefit. On the next slide there, you'll see a little bit more information about the Bellows Falls hydropower project in particular. The property was originally purchased from Bellows Falls Canal Company, and it was to convert that kinetic power into electric power. So in 1927, they actually built a new dam in the place of the existing dam. They reconfigured the canal a little bit, and they built a new powerhouse at the end of the canal, which is pictured there. The inside of the powerhouse, you can see the 3 large generators that are inside there. It's about a 39 megawatt facility. We obtained its first federal license to operate because the Federal Power Act had just been passed in 1943, and its next federal license in 1979. And as you know, and we'll talk about it in a moment here, we're undergoing another relicensing of this asset. So this is an asset that's been in place for about a century. And it was originally developed as part of the New England Power energy system, as part of a regulated utility. So all of this development was part of a rate base that became part of the New England Power portfolio generation and transmission. In the late 1990s, everybody except Vermont and New England deregulated, and so the energy industry deregulated, and New England Power sold off all of its generating assets at that time and maintained its business as a regulated utility. You would know New England Power today as National Grid. Their business name is still New England Power. They're doing business as National Grid. So National Grid is the transmission owner. They are a regulated utility. We own generation assets that used to be owned by New England Power as a merchant generator, merchant wholesale generator. So as Aaron said, we participate in wholesale markets. What you probably maybe know in New England is that the marginal price of energy is set by gas-fired power plants. It's the most perfect. It's like 60 to 70% of the total generation in New England is by gas-fired power plants. They're the ones that set the marginal price of energy. We're just a price taker. There's nothing we can do to control the price that we receive on it, as we're participating in this highly competitive marketplace. And we have no source of guaranteed cost recovery. So we talked a little bit before. I said we talked. It was discussed a little bit yesterday about the relicensing process. I have a lot more information in here so you can understand what we've been undergoing in this relicensing process. It started in 2012 to relicense.
They are a lot later than we.
To relicense an existing hydropower facility that's been in place for a century. The first thing we had to do, we were following what they call an integrated licensing process. I don't expect you to read that chart on the right. It's just to show that it's a complicated and involved process. And you'll see it says 5 to 5.5 years to complete the blue section, and another 2 years to complete the green section. And we're 13 years deep into that process. It involves multiple stakeholders from different environmental stakeholders, state agencies, municipalities, federal agencies are all at the table. The first thing we did is we conducted 33 different studies to the cost of $12 million to inform this process. And we've been engaged in this process now for well over a decade. We filed our initial license application in 2017. We amended that license application in 2020, all with extensive stakeholder input and public input. We have a fish passage settlement agreement that's also been filed in 2024, the last February, FERC issued a ready for environmental assessments. We filed New Hampshire and Vermont water quality certificate applications in April of last year. And so where we have left to go is we expect in April, water quality certificates to be either issued, waived, or denied by the state water quality agencies. Our hope is that they get issued. And we expect the draft environmental assessment to conduct it under the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, and the preliminary license articles to be issued in April 2025 as well. That will begin another public comment period, 60-day public comment period at that point. And then we hope new licenses will be issued in the second quarter of 2026. So by the end of this, we will have been involved in a 14-year process to relicense an existing facility that's been in place for over a century. 3 facilities, Vernon, Bellows Falls, and Wild. Most industries, once you receive your permit to operate, you don't have to redo it again every 40 years. And this took us 14 years to do. At great cost.
And what this bill would require would be for the state agency of transportation to comment on the 60-day comment period on the environmental impact statement that is anticipated to be issued by that point. Okay,
Understood.
and that, all right,
And
because that wasn't clear yesterday as to where anybody was in the process or where what was being asked.
Oh, I just gotta,
I'm looking at pictures of the river.
yeah, me too. I hate to ask, but when will you have to go through this process again?
well, it's depending on how long the license is issued for. We don't know what that will be. That's at FERC's discretion.
Oh, you don't put an ask in the,
We're hoping for at least a 40-year license.
It should be 40 years.
Yeah, so they can be 30 to 50 years.
Okay.
So just so you know, by regulation. that's-
and does it go back to that began 2012 date, or is it when it's issued?
When it's issued.
So it's
It's when it's issued. And so our last license, 1979, if you do the math, was a 40-year license, expired in 2019. They've been issuing extensions, so we've been operating under the existing license conditions under extensions every year as this drags on. So that's a bit about the licensing process. Do you have any further questions about that? Great. So we opposed flatly, and I'll tell you why. And I know it was mentioned yesterday about the possibility of adding this to transportation. We oppose that flatly. Because we think this is just wrong policy in a lot of different ways. First of all, bridges that serve a public benefit. We talked about that these bridges existed, this canal existed long before for different purposes, all along for industry that was driving the development of Bellows Falls and Rockingham. The testimony yesterday said GRH is the primary beneficiary of the canal. They should pay for the bridges. Who are the primary beneficiaries of the bridges? There's transportation companies, railroads, private transportation companies, other private industries, residents that live on the other side of those bridges. Are
We
they
just find if there are no bridges.
Are they going to be asked or demanded to pay for those bridges besides what they already pay in property taxes? Yes.
Thank you. Just for clarity, the bridges have always been owned by those municipalities.
By the municipality
Okay, thank you.
for public benefit.
Another question?
just a random question. You don't own the canal.
We own the canal.
You own the canal,
We own the canal. We do not own the water that flows through the canal.
Yep.
It's a public resource.
but you own the
Purchase the
canal
canal.
itself.
We own the canal. Yep, and we bought the canal, all the water rights, all the land, all that associated with it from the Bellas Falls Canal Company, our predecessor companies did.
Does that include the bridges that are in?
It's a line of the bridges. The bridges are public.
Was there any maintenance agreement, any replacement cost agreement, any in deeds or?
But you maintain the canal.
We maintain the canal. And in fact, I'll talk about maintenance in a second. But then about, you talk about public benefit. What about the public benefit of all renewable energy that we generate? 40% of our output is repatriated to Vermont through our agreement for the next 30 years with GMP, meeting the state of Vermont's renewable energy goals. Where's the public benefit of that? So
For clarity, when did you buy the water?
when did we buy
When did you buy anything associated with the water flow?
the canal company owned all of that long before. So the canal was originally built in 1802.
Right. But in terms of your involvement, your institution's involvement.
So in 1927 was when it became part of a hydropower asset.
Okay, were the bridges in place at that
Yes.
time? And was there any discussion as part of the agreement as to what the implications were in terms of the bridges over the thing that you bought?
Nope.
So
Further question?
your company bought, because the state of Vermont tried to buy those bridges on at least 2 occasions. We didn't have any money, but, so one of them was, maybe you bought them in
So
mid-teens.
it's important to point out that, the ownership has changed a couple of times. Like I
Yeah.
said, it was owned by New England Power for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right? Deregulation happened. They sold in the late 90s to US Generating Company, or subsidiary of PG&E. PG&E owned it until 2005 when they went into bankruptcy.
That
Then
was the first time we tried to buy them.
Then TransCanada Corporation purchased the property, and that's when they established TransCanada Hydro Northeast Incorporated. In 2017, TransCanada sold that company. It was an equity sale. They sold the company. And the new buyer, the new investor at that time, became Uplight Capital, private equity firm in Boston. All they did is an equity sale, so still TransCanada Hydro Northeast, turned it into an LLC, and they changed the name to Great River Hydro, because the original name, TransCanada Hydro Northeast, had a corporate brand to it that did no longer, so it's the same company,
Okay.
just a different investor, a different owner. Happens to companies all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so in 2023, we got a new investor. This is when Hydro Quebec took ownership of it. But again, full equity sale. So they bought the company. And so we still are the company. Locally managed, self-financed.
Your subsidiary.
We have an investor that expects a rate of return. And just like
Okay, but
Is
all
they
these
employees?
transfers.
I started
in all
working,
this time, there has never been any mention of you having a responsibility for the bridges
No.
over the interstate, or over the canal. I'm thinking of, it was a big thing about selling airspace over interstate highways. If I put a walkway in over a road,
you can think of the Star Market over the Boston.
Boston,
The
that's the
Mass
one I'm thinking,
right?
over
Right,
Mass
that's
Turnpike.
exactly what you think of.
Yeah, that it is that companies. They are not the people that own the highway, the state of Massachusetts are not responsible for the maintenance of what's
Right.
going over their property.
And that gets sort of my second point here, is what's the policy precedent? There are approximately 90 hydropower facilities in the state. Are you going to start requiring those hydropower facilities to specifically fund whatever infrastructure project is in their community? Will this standard be applied to public bridges over other private infrastructure like railroads? There are plenty of bridges in the state of Vermont that go over private railways that the only purpose is to get from one side of that railroad to the other. Are you gonna require the railroads to pay for those bridges? That's a crazy diversion from public policy and that's been applied today. But what about residents of dead end roads? They're the only ones that utilize those roads. Shouldn't they pay for the maintenance of their roads individually? Why should the public pay for those things?
Well,
I'll push back and say that a lot of them do nowadays because they already chose.
Well,
It's, I mean,
Yeah.
but those are private roads. Those are private roads,
Yeah.
not public. roads.
Well,
it's dead end street.
But there are
But I
plenty,
live on a
there are
dead-end
plenty
street.
public dead end roads.
this is a touchy subject. We have a former resident of this seat who had his class 4 road privatized.
Sure. And
It is, or we have out of staters who buy on class 4 roads and then are really shocked when they aren't plowed or maintained. So, that's not a good example,
well,
but we get the point.
but you get the point. And then I'd say that the Rockingham Redevelopment Authority was in here yesterday talking about wanting to encourage development on the island. And we get surprised by a bill from where we have a very, what I thought was a very good working relationship with the town of Rockingham. We get surprised by a bill that just gets dropped that would force us to pay. And now we're the most prominent business, the largest taxpayer in town. What signal does that send to potential businesses that would look to locate in the town of Rockingham? Seems like a pretty terrible one to me.
I think I did ask them if they had asked during this how many year process for you to participate in fixing the bridges. And
And we
no
have,
response was, well, they think they might have mentioned it,
we,
but
yeah,
it didn't sound like they had said anything like, we want you to fix the bridges.
and we have been engaged in conversations with with the town manager, with the redevelopment authority, about a variety of things on the island, including this bridge project. This obviously has a lot of impact to us, and we've been in negotiations with them about this.
Oh.
And then this just drops.
Okay, well, I think we may have a legislator who is trying to help out their community and maybe not succeeding. If you have actually been in negotiations with the town, I can understand.
Well, and I'll jump to the last point on the last page there, just because this is important to note. Is I've been in direct communications with Senator Harrison about another project in Vernon for the past month and a half. This was never mentioned. Never, not once. I've been in direct communications with the Rockingham Development Authority. In fact, they sent us a note asking us to support the redevelopment of the Hotel Wyndham in town the very day this dropped. No mention. I was in direct correspondence with the Connecticut River Conservancy on Friday about our longstanding support of their source to sea cleanup. I spent much of the day on Wednesday of last week with one of their river stewards in a mitigation enhancement fund that we sit on a steering committee of. Never, not once did they just mention to us. I found out about Tuesday when it got dropped and filed.
Okay, so it sounds like you got about as
Ambushed
blind.
we were ambushed by it. And, so it definitely does not send a very strong message, just if you're trying to negotiate.
Okay,
Now, I just have to make this point, because
Yep.
we're being asked to contribute to the development of redevelopment of these bridges. We spend $22 million a year in property taxes. See on the right-hand side of this last page, $3.5 million, $3.9 million in property taxes that year. You can see that the town of Rockingham raised from property taxes last year, $5.461 million. We paid $3.9 million.
you pay over half their property tax.
Almost 70%.
71.4%.
Exactly.
That was my question. I was gonna make that point.
I would,
You're a
I would,
contributor.
I would offer that we are a pretty significant contributor, not just to these bridges, but every infrastructure that they own. And, I have.
Everything is fair as in the eye of the beholder.
So, you know, property tax, like we said earlier, is by far our single largest expense. We spend more on property taxes than we spend on operations and maintenance. Entire portfolio, operations and maintenance, insurance, and the dividend that we pay our investor. We combined, we spend more on property taxes.
I don't think it really changes the theme. But it's 3.9 million, is that municipal and education property taxes or just municipal?
That's just in this.
Okay. Sure, so your total tax bill is much greater than that.
You- That's shocking.
So, put this into comparison as well. We spend $22 million a year on property taxes. We can only afford to spend about half of that on our own capital investments that we make in, you know, nobody knows maintaining old, massive infrastructure better than we do. We own the largest dams on New England's largest rivers, most of which are a century old. That takes a lot of capital investment. We actually own bridges, private owned bridges. We own roads.
Somebody sold you a
Privately owned
bridge.
roads. We have to maintain all of that significant infrastructure with our own capital investment. We spend half of what we spend on property taxes, the capital investment, because that's all we can afford to do. And one last point that's not listed here related to property taxes is we're an income producing property. The valuation, the assessment that we get from our communities is based on the profitability of our. If you drive the cost that we have to pay up, our profitability goes down. And therefore, our assessment should go down. And therefore, the amount of taxes you can collect from us should also go down.
Okay, so that's, I know that the appraisal of this dam has been an issue forever. Every time it comes up, and I know the state has had to help the town because they have. So you are on an income, or an income base is part of it.
Mhm.
So when they point out that you make, they weren't sure, we were told $1 million a day, $1 million a week, but that is figured in to the property taxes you were paying. So if we decrease your profit, then I can assume you will appeal your appraisal. And things will be tied up for quite a while, all right. And it will cost somebody a fair amount of money to negotiate all of that.
And the reality is we're paying more in property taxes. I mean, people think of these things as large water powered ATMs. That's the public perception. And
Well,
it-
some people have that perception of any business.
we have massive amounts of investments that we have to drive into these things to keep them running. And it's still a fraction of what we even send as a dip. You know, people think we're just, you know, shipping a bunch of money up to Canada. That's not happening in that manner. That the way that people, it's just a misconception. You know, we're self-financed. This company is self-financed.
Okay. And also substantial insurance costs, right? A business like this with large dams, imagine the insurance costs.
Right.
Well, I mean, regardless of all the profitability arguments, like this late in the process with this amount of percentage of property taxes that you already contribute to the public infrastructure in the town, it just seems, I mean, I'm on your side. Like I hear you. I think the bill seems a little nuts this late in the game, especially this late in the game and without actually involving you in the process. So I just saying it right now, I wouldn't support this bill, and it seems like not a fair piece of legislation. to be putting in, throwing in the copper at this point.
Has there ever been any taxation of the bridges? In any way, shape or form, or any requirement for the municipality to support the construction or maintenance of those bridges?
Well, they're their bridges, so the municipality.
But in terms of looking for money from you or your predecessors to assist in that, has there ever been such a case?
No, not that I'm aware of. That would be basically trying to get into a toll booth, right?
Yeah.
And-
Well, a toll bridge or something that's taxed specifically towards those ends.
Right, but I would hope that they would be taxing not just the canal owner that the bridges go over, but also the businesses that benefit from those as well. I mean, it's about fair taxation in that case, yes. So, I mean, specific, the specific levy on a specific owner for a specific process
That's really what I'm after.
is, is extortion, not taxation.
Okay. I think we've gotten that message, and I just sent Julia away for 5 more minutes, but I will let DOT speak.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming up, and that was good to hear both sides of it.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Jeremy Reed. I'm the Chief Engineer for the Agency of Transportation. Some of my points were already discussed, so I'll sort of glaze over my presentation quickly. Just to start why we're here today. So there's 2 town highway bridges that cross the canal, and there's 2 railroad bridges that cross the canal. One is state-owned and one is owned by a private company. We are looking at replacing those 2 town highway bridges with one bridge. It's a fairly extensive project. Right now, we are scheduled for construction starting in 2029. We're a little bit behind the NEPA process. We've got extensive right-of-way issues. There's contaminated soils on the site, and that are going to require a soil management plan. And we have to work with the dam owner because while we're demoing the existing bridges, they can't produce power. We want to work with them to reduce the water level to the greatest extent possible. But again, all of that are cost drivers for us. And as a initial estimate, as we sit here today, I would say that that project is going to be in the $20 million range for replacement and ultimately the demolition of the existing bridges.
Yeah, that's the 20 million. What's the state likely share versus the municipal?
So they're town highways, so I believe that that would be an 80-10-10 split. So 80 federal, 10 state, 10 town.
It's $1 million per town.
And again, I didn't check the specific funding split, but that's our typical town highway split. So a little bit to rehab what was previously presented. The canal certainly predates hydropower. We didn't have a lot of time, but we did have our attorney generals look at this, and we did find some reference to agreements for the railroad bridges from when the canal was built. We don't know if there's any related to the town highway bridges, but certainly we would need to explore whether or not there were any 18th or 19th century agreements in place when the canal was built. We also don't think using a regulatory framework to essentially finance projects is really the appropriate avenue. It really does create kind of a quid pro quo type scenario that we're not comfortable with, and we're not thinking that creating a funding stream through the regulatory framework is appropriate. Again, this is a little bit late in the process, so we haven't had time to coordinate with Agency Natural Resources, any other appropriate entity, Public Utility Commission, etc. So for us to have a thoughtful response to the comment period would be a challenge for us. So in totality, we oppose the bill and would welcome any questions.
assume if you find a legal requirement back there that their attorneys or the town's attorneys haven't found, then you've got a different ballgame. But to date, no one has found any agreements that the owners of the dams have any obligation to maintain the bridges.
That is correct. The only agreement we know of, and we don't even know what the agreement says, is old agreement with the Rutland Railroad that we acquired. It's referenced in a couple land documents, but we actually don't know what that agreement is.
Okay.
I'm Chair, for my 2 years on this committee last year, I feel like the wall needs a parking lot and a bullpen. And I think this bill needs to go with the parking lot because I kind of share Senator Hardy's perspective that I just don't think that I would be ready to.
Well, I am ready to ask if anyone wants to make a motion to approve, otherwise it will die.
I just have one question.
Yes,
More
no,
for
ask
our
all the
people.
questions.
I noticed in this picture, there's this bridge on the right, which is has a culvert type of road. Well, my understanding, and Senator Matos kind of mentioned this the other day, that those types of bridges are very inexpensive to build relative to the big, long span bridges. Is that bridge acceptable to Great Power?
That bridge no longer exists. It was replaced with a bridge that's very similar to this bridge.
Yeah.
So the Bridge Street Bridge is very similar to the Depot Street Bridge now. It's a single large concrete arch bridge.
Right, but my question is, would that bridge be acceptable to the power company?
So we move the entire flow of the Connecticut River through that canal.
Okay, so you're saying it's not?
No.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we get a heavy rain.
Because I think those are a lot less expensive to put in.
Yeah.
Okay,
What goes, just building on that, what goes around and down the falls there, around the other corner?
So that's called the bypass breach. So only when when there's more water in the river than we can physically pass through our station. The water then diverts over through the bypass breach.
Okay.
Once we receive our new license, we have agreed to maintain what they're calling an aesthetic flow. A certain amount of water in that bypass breach at all times, up to 300 CFS which is cubic feet per second, which is size of a basketball. So 300 basketballs per second will be passing through that bypass breach,
For aesthetic reasons.
which will be
That was an interesting thing to walk in on, sorry.
So the bottom line is that that's 300 cubic feet per second that we won't be able to generate. That's less renewable energy generation that will be applied.
all right.
Fascinating.
I assume that might have also something to do with fish, because I know fish up the Connecticut River has been an issue.
Yeah, so our fish ladder actually,
You have a fish
you have a
ladder.
fish ladder, we have a visitor center there that, when the fish ladder is running, is open. We actually we pay for the Nature Museum of Grafton to actually staff the museum and hold environmental programming and everything. And there's a viewing window there where people can see the fish going through the fish
You
ladder.
ever get salmon back in the river, they can go up there.
You'll remember they abandoned the salmon restoration program a number of years ago, so.
We did, all right. Okay,
Byproduct of Hurricane Irene, I think.
Yeah.
all right. Committee, does anyone want to make a motion to approve, or do we just let this one sit?
I'd be inclined to let it sit.
Okay, I'm not hearing anyone say they move to approve. And if we do nothing by tomorrow,
Then we're gonna sit.
it's essentially dead because it'll sit in the rules.
Well, is it helpful to vote no on it? Because
could
then
vote
it
no.
will die. Because if it just sits up there, it's still alive. If we
That's
vote
true.
no, does it actually die? Well, how does that work?
Yeah,
You know
if
what I
we
mean?
vote no, it would have to be reintroduced as a House bill. You can't reintroduce a bill that's been voted down by the Senate.
That's only on the floor though.
Yeah, I
but-
think that's only on the floor. I think somebody could reintroduce it. But if we go through the same process and come here and sit
Or make an amendment to existing bill.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can do that too.
yeah. I mean, if you want to play games with this, you can. There's always ways.
We're just
The
trying to
Senate
figure out how
intends
to-
not to. We could, yeah.
I missed your testimony. but-
Yeah, we hold it.
Okay.
It would be a stronger statement if somebody moved to approve it and then we voted it down, but nobody wants to move to approve.
So we just leave it up there. We gave it a
Yeah.
fair shot, you know?
Yeah,
To my previous point, I just remember that board gets really full, and so after a while, it's kind of nice to
not
put
this year.
more sales stuff up top.
Well, I know, but we might need a vehicle.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
It's a vehicle. If you see that, don't get worried.
There was feminine hygiene product that they put, what did they put on that? Oh, corporate and sent it back. And I did that bill 4 times, I think, on the floor before we finished the process and got to change the name. So, it never hurts to have a vehicle.
Is there a way to keep it from going on to T-bill?
No,
I don't think there is.
If anything, I meant that they could have the
I
the
don't
discussion
know.
down there.
I don't-
Trans always
I
is.
mean, no, there isn't. But it's, so if she wants to ask to have it put on the T-bill, we will ask to be heard and tell them why we decided not to do it. I doubt it's, well, no, it shouldn't get, no, the T-bill gets an extra week, so she could try to get it.
The T-bill isn't over here yet. It's in the house.
That's right. Okay, so yes, she could still do
She
that,
could.
but it would be risky.
Don't worry.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think for now, we've done what we can do, which is we are not voting this out.
Madam Chair, can I just correct the
Yeah.
record for some, for,
Yeah.
and my property tax coordinator is listening in on the Zoom. And she shot me a text and said that the 3.9 million is inclusive. of- Yeah. So, thank you for the question and sorry for the
This
mistake.
doesn't change the theme, but
There are pros and cons with being out on YouTube. Y'all are getting
So
watched.
it's a different percentage. Budget.
thank you for.
Okay,
No, thank you.
so thank you. And I hope you'll keep negotiating with them. I am not sure the town was the instigator.
I believe that's true.
So. Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you.
I didn't think that-
Bill Bridges. Should I?
This has been a fascinating
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
It's probably out there.
And I was gonna say, I overheard that conversation.
Yeah.
If we're interested in a field trip, we're happy to host. We do it all the time, especially for legislators. We're happy to do
Yeah, that's like a
it.
fascinating.
It could be both of our committees.
By tomorrow, we will probably be starting to think about field trips, since I believe it's going to be in the 50s.
What do you say?
We're hosting a Vermont, New England Women in Energy and the Environment, tour. They opened a Vermont chapter this year, and Great River Hydro is hosting them later this year, right?
Very cool.
The control center and then one of the.
Stay in touch.
Wilder is a good place to do it because it's right, it's right there in White River
Yeah.
Junction, and easy to get for you. And that's where our 24/7 renewable operations control center is. So that's where we are, our brain center is.
That just got accepted in environmental engineering at UNM.
Oh, yes, we didn't hear.
Look at that.
Proud dad. That embarrassed.
Yes.
On YouTube.
My son's
Okay,
too,
Vinny,
so.
we have put a call out for Julie to come back in, and we are going back to changes to the property tax credit.
Thank you.
Things looking at different ways we might want to structure that as we move forward. And
Break until she arrives.
I only told her we were 5 minutes late. She's out here, but we'll be here momentarily. And if I let you out, no one will be back.
Oh, wait, wait.
Seconds.
Yeah, I don't normally do that.
We still have the snacks if anybody's hungry.
We saw that.
Oh. You, wait.